Birth.
Home and birth, right? From the day they're in the womb till the time they come out. And there are so many factors from the time this child is born to the time they hit us in school. There's so much work that just needs to be done right there in the home before they even get to us. And we're going to talk about those discrepancies in a moment. I went the wrong way. Only 48% of low socioeconomic status children are school ready by age 5. That's nationwide. In Rochester, it's much worse. We're at about 28% of our children are already ready by age 5. So again, when they enter school, there's a lot of stuff we have to make up. A lot of gaps we have to fill early on because we really need to push that so quickly, knowing that by 3rd grade, that's kind of the benchmark. This is a precursor to what to expect. Does that mean if you can't read by 3rd grade, you'll never read and you'll never graduate? No. Again, it was just 63% more likely that they won't. But we're in the middle of trying to combat that right now. And your help and support in that initiative is going to be crucial because it's all about community. It takes the village to raise the child, right? Almost 3/4 or more of 4th and 8th grade Black and Hispanic public school students could not read or compute in math in 2013. We had 7% of our African American males in the Rochester City School District pass the New York State exams in grades 3-8. 7%. 68% of our population in our schools is African American. 26% is Hispanic. So if you think about that, this is even more critical in areas like Rochester, but it's spreading. It's everywhere, right? Our communities are changing. We have refugees coming in from Sudan. We have kids coming in from Nepal. It's starting to spread. We have to start taking this other lens of how do we really instruct our students in a way that's going to help them survive in our very multicultural world as we're growing. So this is one of my favorite slides because it kind of really illustrates, especially the next one, why this happens. So really, there is a 30 million word gap, spoken word gap, starting by age 3. Now, IQ and language for children is always based on the amount that parents speak to their children. Now, let's take a little census here. Raise your hand if you have children, or had children at one point. Okay, raise your hand if you read to your child. Raise your hand if you played music for your child. Raise your hand if you talked to your child. Even if they didn't understand what you were saying, right? You still talked with your child. Thank you. Unfortunately, what you'll see in a moment is children in high poverty situations, they don't hear a lot of talk in the home for a variety of reasons, but they're not hearing enough talk because what do our babies do? About age 1, right? Well, even before then, they start to babble. And it starts like that, right? They're trying to communicate in their own way. And then through you goading them on as you talk to them back or you make funny noises and faces, they start to go. You're reading to them. Do they understand the words? Maybe not, but they slowly build that language. Children's academic success at ages 9 and 10 is about the amount of talk they hear from birth to age 3. That's when they are sponges. I mean, they're sponges all the way up to 3rd grade. I'm so sorry that this keeps doing that. Is that annoying anybody?
No.
Is it okay if I keep going in and out?
Coil it up and hold it by your ankle.
Up here?
No, coil it up.
Coil it up.
There you go. Now hold it. There you go.
Good trip.
Push it up in.
How's that? Ooh, thank you. See, I learn something new every day. So this is super important because it's all about language. What are they hearing? That's how you learn a new language. Anybody here know 2 languages or more? Wow. My hat's off to you. I think I 4 years of French and then I never went to France, so I can't remember any of it, but good for you. But that comes through discussion, right? Talking, hearing, speaking, and that's how our children learn language. Parents of advanced children talk significantly more to their children than parents who are not as advanced. That's huge. My nephew at 3 years old looked at me and goes, well, actually, Aunt KK, just like that, attitude. Well, actually, Aunt KK, that's not correct. I looked at him and I go, excuse me, who are you? What? What'd you just say? I mean, I work in the city school district and I'm pushing academic language all the time, but when students first enter my 1st grade classroom, they talk very minimally and they talk in short sentences and short phrases. And I have a 3-year-old nephew saying, well, actually, Aunt KK, well, my sister is a director of marketing and her ex-husband, we won't go there today, is a lawyer. And so they grew up in an affluent home that talks a lot, has the news on a lot, and just that discussion is there. So it's really quite incredible what the difference becomes. Words spoken and heard in an hour. So if you take children, you can see from there, I'm sorry the color's a little off. In the top right is the red box. Those are students that live, or children that live in a low socioeconomic status home. Then you have working class in the blue, and then you have professional in the orange. So what do you notice about this chart, just by looking at it? This is words heard in the home.
Well, it goes up.
It goes up?
In a very significant way, depending upon the...
Very significant way, right? From one group to another. Anything else jump out? A lot of people like to ask me where they get the numbers from.
Yeah,
right? Well, I'm going to tell you, because this was fascinating when I first heard it. So, in homes, what they did was they, of course, surveyed low SES. How about I just say that? Low SES, working class, and professional homes, and found that in 1 hour, children in a low socioeconomic status home were hearing 616 total spoken words. In a professional home, they were hearing 2,153 spoken words in an hour. And it didn't have to be large vocabulary, right? But and it could be the same word repeated multiple times. But how many words in an hour were they hearing? And then in a working class home, 1,251. If you multiply that amount of words times 14 waking hours a day, times 7 days a week from birth through age 4, you have a 30 million spoken word gap. So students in a low poverty area, or a high poverty area, are coming in with such a lack of just basic vocabulary and language skills than their professional counterparts. And they're coming in and we're expecting them to start off day one with the same curriculum all of our students across the state are. And yet they're coming in with gaps. And so it's about, well, what do we do between birth through age 9 when they hit 3rd grade, that critical piece, to really close any gaps that may exist? For whatever reasons those gaps exist. It's huge. Because when they come to us, yes, we're going to push the academic and social emotional piece, but how do we involve the community and the family to help us? Because what about prenatal care, right? I mean, it starts in the womb and then it comes out. And how about child visits? And do we have books in the hands of kids in their homes so that they can read at home? All things that I had as a child and took for granted. So I'm just going to play. I hope this will work. I tried to put the volume in. I just want to give you some examples of little kids trying to read. Raise your hand if you ever had a child or knew a child that liked to just pick something up and pretend that they were reading. Absolutely. Why do you think that they thought to pick up a book and start pretending to read it? What would goad them to do that? That's right. They've been watching you. They've been watching other people do it. There's a model in place that this is something good, and now they want it. They want it really bad, right? They love when dad or mom does the cool voices. So it's all about that language acquisition. And then there's one more. This always makes me smile. I love kids. You know, they're just so cute. I babysat nannied for years, so I am like a hardcore kind of, I don't know. I just love kids. They're wonderful. That one's pretty funny. Have you seen this one? I love this. well, they're at least having a great conversation about something. I'd like to know what it is, because it sounds really awesome. But, that's what it's about, right? That's what we should be hearing and seeing in the home and in the classrooms, right? Kids talking, expressing language in whatever manner that they can. And so that's so critical. But imagine a child who doesn't have that kind of environment. Their parents work several jobs. They're not able to be home consistently. And so they're not there to read these books all the time. Or maybe our children are living in a traumatic situation, and there is just no access to books or anyone to read to them or talk to them. Some of our babies spend years in a crib. So it's like, what do you do to help any literacy gaps that come? And I always stress it's so important to be empathetic but not sympathetic. And I heard that from a wonderful speaker years ago. And what that meant to me and what it meant to him was to be empathetic means that you can understand and try to relate to the issues that all of our children face across this nation. And you can have some sympathy towards that, but that you still set high expectations. You don't say, because of this, you can't this. Or, oh, poor baby, I'm now going to talk really low down to you because I don't think you can handle the academic vocabulary. I know it. And we start to set lower expectations. Did you set low expectations for your babies when you were talking to them? Or did you have conversations with your spouse or your family that had normal adult academic vocabulary that we use all the time? That's what they need to be exposed to, our children. They need that language. And so with that in mind, I like to bring it back to the kids. So there are 5 main factors that attribute to this big literacy gap. Does anyone want to take a guess as to anyone that they think they are? Hunger. Fear.
Number of parents in the home.
No parents at home. Yeah, I once had a first grader, 6-year-old, didn't come to school for 3 days. So we went on a home visit, and he was there babysitting his 1- and 2-year-old sister. No parent, he was the babysitter.
Families moving a lot.
Families moving a lot. Very transient populations in many cases. Poverty.
Tired.
What was that? Tired. Oh, yes. I had a little boy that'd come in every day. In the first hour, I just let him sleep because he fell asleep on the floor, on the carpet all the time. Fine, go ahead. And then I made time later to make sure I pulled him in and he caught up on what he missed. But yes. Okay. Well, we're going to go through them because this is really fascinating. And this is all bred out of the research, Campaign for Grade Level Reading. This all comes from the National Reading Panel, which came out with their big Double Jeopardy report in 2009, and then again in 2013. And so with this report, that's where all this data and research is coming from. What are some factors? School readiness and preschool. Are they ready to hit kindergarten? Are they ready? Because we know kindergarten, unfortunately, has gone away from being, let's go play in the sand table and the water table and just talk all day and build blocks. It has become a very rigorous, whether we like it or not, the standards are there and they have to know these things. So they come into kindergarten doing some of that, but now it's like, let's get ready to learn. And in Rochester, we have full day kindergarten. And so they do come full day. We have about 2,300 children that come every day to kindergarten. And so are they ready? Did they go to preschool, right? Now, of course, in some suburban homes and rural homes, and even in the city with the more affluent areas of the city, we have kids that go to preschool all the time. Some are school-centered, some are out in community-based organizations, Volunteers of America, YMCA churches, parochial. And so we do have kids going to preschool, but not all. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, because are they ready? How can we get them even earlier in an environment to just expose them to language? We're not asking a pre-K to pick up a book and read it, right? He can read it and babble or say what they think it is or memorize what you said, right? I mean, who didn't know Green Eggs and Ham by heart? I did. You know, or The Rainbow Fish, or, you know, Sally Lost Her Tooth. You know, there's just certain books you just know. So that's a huge factor. Attendance. This is critical. The chronic absenteeism rates contribute greatly to children not being able to move forward and close that gap. If you're not in school, you're not learning. And so we keep track of that in the city, as do all districts, because it's something that you do have to report to the state. And they take a good look at it. Because what we found is the children that we've had chronic absenteeism with, and we've charted this for 10 years, they're the ones that are not succeeding later, amongst other issues. You can see the other factors that feed in, but that's a big one. If you're not in school, you're not learning. Summer learning. We have what is called a massive step back or summer learning loss that tends to happen. Now, in my summer vacations, and I was very fortunate that I grew up in an affluent home where I had access to going to the zoo in the summer, or my parents just said, go outside and play and come home when the light's on. And, out I went and we created games and we were using our imaginations and things. We didn't have, iPads, and TV was this big quasar thing that sat on the floor that you had to turn the big knob for. We didn't have all the electronics that are out there today. But the summer learning's huge because, at least in impoverished communities, there's a lack of resources for our students to go to these places and have these experiences. Go to summer camps that cost money. Go to the zoo. Go to Seabreeze. Go anywhere that they want to go. I mean, that's just a barrier that exists. And if there are no books in the home when they go home in the summer and no one's reading to them, they start to fall back. So all the gains that they make during the school year, research shows they start to catch up to their suburban peers because of all the things we do in the school setting to get them there. But then as soon as they go away for the summer, they start to fall back, but the suburban or affluent kids continue to grow because they're still having those experiences in the summer. So then the next year, you're trying to make up this bigger gap, and then the next summer it happens again, and over time that gap just keeps widening and widening and widening. So how do we help them to continue to read and write and speak during the summer? Family stressors, poverty, hunger. Hunger's a big one, not gonna lie. Someone mentioned being tired. That's another huge one. Trauma. I mean, unfortunately, every time I turn on the news in Rochester, there's a horrible event that's just happened, and our kids are experiencing it every day. There was a murder that took place right across the street from my school the night before we got there, and that affected numerous families and our school community. And so they're dealing with homelessness. They're dealing with so many things in many cases that, again, those gaps exist. So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but how do we close them? That's where the positive comes in. We can close these gaps. We can give our kids the chance to excel and catch up. And that's what's so exciting. High quality teaching is the fifth factor. Do we have high quality teaching? And this is not to bash teachers. There's a lot that goes into high quality teaching. I was a teacher. I know. There's a lot that has to go into how we can be the best for our students. So, school readiness in preschool. It's one of the most strongest factors of elementary school preparedness, right? And it looks very different everywhere you go, but in our preschool programs, they're playing with water, they're playing with sand, they're playing with each other, they're doing blocks, they're counting their 1 through 10 and trying to count on fingers for one-to-one correspondence, and they're singing the ABCs, right? Those are all really big things because those pre-literacy math skills are really necessary. So when they actually hit kindergarten, where school is really beginning now, it's not first grade anymore, they have a jump start and the communication skills. Everything about pre-K is talk, and listen. Everything that they do in pre-K is to get them into conversation with their peers and with their teacher to build that language. That is critical. So I'm going to give you the lens from our CSD, and these are things that may be happening in your community as well. And then it's how can you support in your community any of these types of initiatives. So we, luckily, last year received the largest grant in the state, $10 million, to do full-day pre-K in the city school district. They used to be half-day, right? They go for half a day, morning or afternoon. But we ended up doing full-day pre-K, and that was huge for us. Because now our kids are in a program all day. They're getting 3 meals, including a snack, right? So they get breakfast, they get lunch, they get snack, they get nap time. They also get all of these engaging opportunities. They're outside or doing gross motor play for up to an hour a day, hour and a half in some cases. So again, getting them in, because we know now that that is a precursor to success. Now they have it for a full day. Ramp up to pre-K. I just piloted that this year. As part of my job, I have to create initiatives to help close these gaps. And what we did was we took 3 classrooms in 2 schools in the city, And we offered parents, if they sent their children to this ramp-up pre-K program, that they would be guaranteed a spot at that school for kindergarten. So right now it's a lottery. State requires a lottery to get into a pre-K and then to get into a kindergarten. So even if your kid went to school 25's pre-K, there was no guarantee they'd go to school 25 for kindergarten on. And so there was this big gap. So our thing was, well, let's try it. Let's start pre-K 3 weeks early. And in those 3 early weeks, what can we do to really ramp up our kids to make them ready to start pre-K? Just think of a fire drill bell. Do you know how startling that could be to any child? I have an autistic stepson, and let me tell you, that noise set them off like that if they're not prepared. And so with that in mind, we built so many things into this 3-week program. It was incredible. They got to meet their teachers, and it's the same teacher and paraprofessional they're going to have during the year. There's no other big kids at the school, so they're able to explore the school and get used to their environment before all the kids come. As a matter of fact, first day of school at 25, they did say, oh, the first thing our kids said when they came in was, where are all these kids coming from? Who are they? Because they were used to being the masters of their school at this point. The fire drill started off shaky. They did 1 a week for 3 weeks. By the time school started and that first fire drill went off, those pre-K kids were perfectly fine, whereas the pre-K class that didn't do the ramp up, the kids were very startled, very upset. It was very difficult to move them on. So we were able to screen kids early in those 3 weeks to figure out where are the possibly gifted and talented moments, where are the kids that need early intervention, and start day 1 of the regular school year off and running. And so we're going to do this comparative analysis. I'm so excited between kids that did have the benefit of this and who didn't, to see if that really does, just that 3 weeks, give them that jump start they need to be successful. Also, Pre-K Go K Summer School we started this year, and a lot of districts are starting to think about this. So Pre-K Go K, these are kids leaving 4-year-old Pre-K, and they're about to transition to kindergarten. That is a big transition. It really is. They're going from a full play, talking, cooperative learning environment into a classroom. Very structured, very traditional in many cases, but they're being asked to think and do more. And so it starts to change, and so that transition is critical. And by letting them do 5 weeks after their pre-K year, for the first 2.5 weeks are still pre-K, and then midway through it transitions to what it's going to be like in kindergarten, then they only have 3 weeks off for vacay, and then boom, school starts. So now they've had that extra transition. So that's exciting. Now imagine the kids that go to the incoming 4-year-old pre-K 3 weeks, and then they go to the 5 weeks at the end of the year. That's 8 extra weeks they're going to have before they hit kindergarten. I'm really excited. I think that's going to be huge. Lending libraries. Everyone in the Rochester City School District, we used grant funds to purchase a huge lending library for every pre-K classroom. Head Start, community-based organizations in the district. And with that, parents can now come into the sites and they can get a book and take it home, rather than having to go to their public library, which we are always pushing the public library. But that gives parents a chance right then and there to grab books and go. And so that's really critical. If you think about what are some ways, be thinking about this, that volunteers could be useful in any of these capacities, particularly in the last one. We need books. We need people that want to volunteer and come in and read to our children, because you do have a teacher and a para, but in our pre-K classes, they love to read, even if it's fake reading, and they want to hear you read, and then you ask them questions. It's so amazing to watch what just an extra person in a room can do to bring a child along and build their confidence. And we just found out 2 days ago that we received the largest grant in the state to implement a full-day 3-year-old pre-K. We're so excited. So we're really trying hard, because being last in the state for state test scores of 3rd grade, we're the 436th out of 436 districts in the state. Our kids need it. They deserve it. They need it. They deserve it. I'm going to say that over and over because this is so critical. So if we can start them even earlier now, this is great. And our families are wanting this, right? But again, once they get there, there's just 2 adults. Now imagine 2 or 3 kids per adult. You go in and read a book, you can have 3 kids with you. Teacher's got 3 or 4, the parent has 3 or 4. Now kids are really engaged, they're in smaller groups. It's just so exciting. There's nothing like watching a child be delighted to hear a text read or to read to you. Attendance, and I won't belabor this one, but really, they gain 8% more literacy skills In kindergarten, nearly 7% more in first grade when they attend school. That's huge because we already know that that chronic absenteeism gap exists, particularly in our district, but all around. You know, you think, no problem, so-and-so's sick today, I'll keep them home, and please do, right? Because we don't want the germs. My nieces just came home with hand, foot, and mouth disease, so that's super fun. So I'm quarantined from them for a week. But, you know, think about that, right? They're home sick, or something happens, there's no transportation, the parent can't get them there. But if you add up all those little instances over the course of the year, we found that our chronic absenteeism, particularly at pre-K where it's the heaviest, and then kindergarten, kids were missing more than 50% of the school year. So how are we supposed to close gaps if they're not in school? That doesn't mean, we do have a few that just didn't come for several months, but for the most part, it's just they miss a day a week for whatever reason, again, for many reasons, and by the end of the year, they've missed half of a school year. So again, attendance. So we have Ready Freddy. We just started this initiative. Anyone heard of Ready Freddy? It was born out of Philadelphia, and it is highly successful. Ready Freddy is a big frog. You can see him over there, and we purchased 3, which can be a little intimidating to little kids, don't get me wrong, but Lisa's not a clown. Because I don't know about you, but not a big clown lover. I think it was Poltergeist, I swear that's what did it. But we have Ready Freddy. He shows up at all of our pre-registration fairs. He goes to the schools. He goes to the homes when we do our truancy blitzes. I'll keep pulling. Our truancy blitzes and whatnot. And he goes to say, hey, come to school, come to school. So that's just one aspect of Ready Freddy. We have calendars for families that go home with different activities they can do every day of the month. And in certain times to bring them in, and they get incentives and rewards for that. It's a huge attendance. You can look this up online. There's some wonderful resources for Ready Freddy. So community, how can you help in that aspect? Well, first, we'd love for you to come put a frog suit on, but that's okay. We'll leave it to our interns and whatnot. But come in, again, we have to do these truancy blitzes in the Rochester City School District. Once a month, we get as many people from the community together as possible. We have our mayor, we have city council people, we have Wegmans, we have local parishioners. We have so many people that come on these truancy blitzes, about 80 or so, and they commit once a month to come in and go out in groups to all the homes of the kids not in school that day, or kids that we're purposely targeting that have chronic absenteeism, and they just go knock on the door and say, what's up? What can we do? Do you need a ride to school today? Let me help. Or is there something else going on? And it's a wonderful community event, and that's really where we could even use more resources, or in your own community, if absenteeism is an issue, truancy blitzes. Wonderful way to get it started. And then we also offer free bus passes to all of our pre-K students to help them get to school. Parents who apply for that, it's free. And it's a family bus pass, so the whole family rides the city bus for free for the entire school year. And that's huge because they can use it on the weekends, they can do it at night. It's a really important way to transit our children. Summer learning, yes. I've talked about that summer slide, that summer learning loss, but we found that the loss is sizable and may help explain those substantial persistent reading issues that we have, because our kids make such great gains during here, and then they come back the next year, and I know, because I looped with my kids from 1st to 2nd grade, and when they came back to me in 2nd grade, while it was great, because they knew my rituals and routines, you know, I'm a very structured person, it's the Army brat in me, I think, and they came in ready to go, but I spent the first 3 weeks to 4 weeks of school reteaching things from the year before, which is pretty normal anyway, but I mean heavily reteaching and trying to get them back to where they were. And so that's a reality. And we didn't really have summer school programs for those children at that age level back then. And this was back in 2000, 2001. So that's something to think about. So what are we doing? We have a lot of really cool things going on, and I'm going to highlight this summer reading piece because this is where anyone in the community can really support. I mean, this is critical. Get books in the hands of our kids in the summer. That goes for kids everywhere. It's not just low poverty areas. Anywhere. Kids need to read, right? So, and there's a lot that goes into that. What's going to get a kid to read, do you think? If we give them a book, what's going to help a kid want to read that book?